Amanda Knox is speaking out at length for the first time since being released from an Italian prison. She's the American exchange student who was found guilty of killing her roommate in Italy. That guilty verdict was overturned, but Italy's highest court jumped in and ruled she could face a new trial. We'll talk to her attorney about the case in just a moment. First, Michelle Franzen reports on how Knox is attempting to set the record straight.
Amanda Knox has kept a low profile since her release from prison a year and a half ago. That after an Italian court overturned the murder convictions of Knox and her then boyfriend, Raffaella Solicito. The exchange student was just 20 years old at the time when her roommate, Meredith Kircher, was brutally murdered at the place they shared in the small Italian village of Perugia. Knox and her family spent 4 years battling the murder charges. In her new memoir, Waiting to Be Heard, Knox is speaking out about her ordeal, writing about how prosecutors made her life in prison miserable. In an interview with People magazine, Knox says, "I am not a murderer," and details her case and emotional journey.
Amanda describes her ordeal as being the one where her privacy was invaded, where the guards were leering and touching and in her space.
Knox has maintained from the beginning she is not the villain or vixen prosecutors alleged. Douglas Preston, author of the book The Monster of Florence, has spoken to Knox and believes her book will offer the public a different view of Knox.
The only time we have heard from Amanda Knox was when she testified in her own defense at her trial, and she's been resolutely silent, since her return to America. So this is really her first time speaking about the case.
Last month, Italy's highest court overturned Knox's and Solicito's acquittals. Now they wait for word of a possible retrial. Knox has said she has no plans to go back to Italy for a new trial. For today, Michelle Franzen, NBC News.
Ted Simon is Amanda Knox's attorney. He joins us from Philadelphia for the latest on her case. Ted, good morning. Thanks for coming on with us.
Good morning, Lester.
It's been quite a month for Amanda Knox, the reversal of her acquittal, now the book. How is she holding up? Have you spoken to her recently?
Oh, absolutely. I speak to her quite often. We had a lengthy conversation the other day, and she's doing remarkably well.
Remind me now what this appeals court, or what the Supreme Court essentially did here. Was their concern the facts of the case, the DNA, the evidence, or was it more procedural?
Good point. It was a procedural ruling. Let's be clear. The Supreme Court simply said there should be a revision, and the Supreme Court is sending it back to a new appellate court jury for some further redeterminations. We don't know the extent of that yet because the motivation or the opinion has not been generated. But let's not forget, the appellate court jury that conducted a searching inquiry into this case determined unmistakably whether it had to do with prosecution witness testimony, prosecution physical evidence, or prosecution forensic conclusions. It concluded that it was either absent, non-existent, unreliable, inaccurate, or simply not there. So nothing substantially has happened with regard to the evidence. There was no evidence, there is no evidence, and there never will be any evidence.
Let me ask you this, though. With the book about to come out, are you at all concerned that anything she wrote, anything she put in that book in her own defense, might contradict something in the case and might become problematic in this process?
Well, it's an understandable question, and I'm sure everyone will carefully review this book. But I think for those that do read the book, they're going to find it thoughtful, vividly descriptive, with a healthy dose of introspection, and it's quite poignant. She has the ability to take the reader into the situation, into her experience, as if they're virtually accompanying her through this nightmarish and harrowing journey.
And I want to ask you a question that Michelle Franzen in her report noted that Amanda is not going to Italy. Is she even required to be there now for this process? And would she go back if reconvicted?
Well, I think it's a fair question that people pose, but we have to look at this through the lens of the criminal justice system in Italy, not the way it's conducted in the U.S. And what we know is that on this particular remand or revision, it's not legally required for her to be there. And with respect to the points that were raised by the prosecution, which we don't know which ones will be adopted or not by the Supreme Court, As to those particular points, it's unnecessary. It doesn't involve her. So it's either not required or unnecessary. So those kind of issues are really not on the legal landscape at this point. They're not even in the legal telescope because they're simply not required. And we can't view this as an American might look at an American case. We must look at it through the lens of the criminal justice system in Italy. It's simply not required. And ultimately, there's no reason to believe that anything else will happen but another not guilty, since there's simply no evidence and there never was any evidence. And
Ted
there never
Simon,
will be any evidence.
Great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on with us this morning. Appreciate it.